Welcome out to another episode of It's All Been Done Radio Hour. This week, we've got a special Meet the Cast. It's Meet the Lab, Meet the MadLab. MadLab, our host site since live show number 9, so over 2 years now, has been so good to us, and we thought some of you not in Columbus, Ohio, or even those in Columbus, Ohio, might want to know more about the theater, what they do, what their history is. They've been around for more than 2 decades, so there's a lot for them to talk about. I, Jerome, sit down with Nikki Smith, who's the managing director of MadLab, and Greg McGill, who was the ensemble chair at the time, and also, I believe, the longest serving current member of MadLab. So he's got lots of stories, Nikki's got stories. You guys will know Nikki because she does another program for our network. It's All Been Done Presents, our parent network, which has podcast, written work, video series, and more. Nikki does a video series for us called Nikki Tells You How to Live Your Life. So if you go to our YouTube channel, you can watch her be hilarious as she gives you really bad advice. And occasionally some poignant advice as well, but mostly really bad, funny advice on how you should be living your life. As of right now, she's nearing the end of season 2, so there's quite a few episodes on there to watch, and they're only a couple minutes long, so hopefully you'll really enjoy that. Thank you very much to Nikki and Greg for sitting down with me. Thank you to MadLab for continuing to host us all this time. We love them and hope to stay there. Also, quick thank you to Circle 270 Media, which this podcast is a part of. If you would like to hear more of these podcasts, please go to patreon.com/IABD and support our show. Now here's Meet the MadLab. Welcome out to a special Meet the Cast episode. This one's Meet the Theater, MadLab Theater. We have 2 very special guests with us. Nikki Smith, the managing director.
Hello.
And Greg McGill, who's the ensemble chair.
Hi.
How are you guys doing?
Awesome.
Cool.
Well, now that we got that out of the way.
So we thought it would be interesting for people that follow the podcast to learn more about the theater that we perform in. I know Greg's been with the theater forever, and Nikki's been there a long time as well. Yes. But let's talk about the start of MadLab. How did MadLab get started?
Okay. MadLab was originally founded by essentially Eric Myers and Dan O'Reilly. There are various other people who I think sometimes that I've heard of that stake some claim, but it was pretty much just those 2 guys putting on really bizarre, forward-thinking, I guess, avant-garde theater performances, monologue shows and such in the basement of a hair salon on High Street in the Short North. They had some pretty lofty ideals of what they thought would be really great, interesting performance, a lot of multimedia, futuristic thinking stuff. So their first really big production was, so that was all in 1995. 1997 was the first really big production, and I jumped to there because that's when I became involved. And it was a production called Baki, which Bakkee, which was their translation of, or their adaptation of, The Bacchae by Euripides. And it took place, it was performed in an abandoned warehouse where the audience moved from room to room to see various different scenes of decadent violence and sexuality, etc. And it was kind of set in a futuristic society where the society had mandated that sex must happen at all times. And the whole point of that was so that society would lose the taboo of sex, and sex would no longer be this destructive force. And so where Dionysus came in is he was coming back to the city with the belief that, hey, that was great. That was a great movement we made. Now we needed to do the same thing with violence. Violence must happen at all times. Killing people randomly and wantonly, because after a time of that, violence will lose its taboo and it won't be such a human desire, et cetera, et cetera. So that's where I became involved. I mean, I played a very minor role, but...
Yeah. But that's when the theaters... with MadLab recently, their 20th anniversary. Mm-hmm. So they're counting that from 1997, not from the prior?
No, that was from 1995. We had that anniversary in 2015. So we have so many things we could use as anniversaries, because 1999 was when we got a building.
Why was 1995 what was settled on?
What was what? I'm sorry?
Why was 1995 the date that you settled on?
Because that was in the first performances under the name MadLab.
Oh, okay. Yep. Before that, it was called something else?
Well, it didn't exist before 95. I mean, Eric did have a company it was called Naive, which was an acronym for something, and I don't remember exactly. But first settled on MadLab as an entity, as a company in 95.
So how did you get involved in that show?
So when I got out of school, I had aspirations of being a playwright and such. And what many of your listeners won't know about is back in those days there was this large book, and it was the color yellow. And you would open this book up, and there would be phone numbers for various different businesses.
What?
And so I looked up
I know,
theaters.
right?
Really?
I used one to sit on in my first car.
right.
To see over the steering wheel.
Okay. I've actually got one in a closet stashed so my kid will know what they look like.
Yeah.
Nice.
Well, so I looked in one of those, and I was looking up theaters, just kind of calling to see what opportunities are there. I called a company called Red Herring Theater, and most of the companies I called, nobody answered, whatever, went to answering machine, not voicemail. But some guy whose last name was Herring answered that phone. Michael Herring of Red Herring Theater, and we talked a lot. He was willing to have a really long conversation with me. It was great. What came out of that is I did become a volunteer for Red Herring, but he also said to me, you should talk to my friend Eric. He's putting on a production. It sounds like you want to do a lot of different things, and you don't have a whole lot of a resume or anything like that. This guy Eric is putting on a production where he just needs a lot of people willing to, work hard. So, and Michael was actually going to be in that production, and he was. So Michael got me in touch with Eric. I auditioned for the Bacchae. I mean, we can question how good of an actor I am now, but I was definitely not any good then. Eric, many years later, found his original notes for that audition, and it said, this person this person this. Greg, non-speaking. But anyway, I got cast. It was not the kind of theater I thought I had any interest in. And then, by the end of the process, I was just looking around going, whoa, man, this is what happens when you get a whole bunch of people who wish they were stars in a goth rock band who create theater. And I thought it was pretty awesome. Mm-hmm. So that's how that came to be.
That is cool. So then you said a couple years later, MadLab got its first building. Yeah,
we rented a building, 105 North Grant, which is now the Grass Skirt.
Tiki restaurant.
Yeah, Tiki restaurant. So we rented that place in 99. Eric had ambitions of the place being a theater, a place to perform his work. Because at that point in time, MadLab was still pretty much just doing Eric's plays. A place to workshop new work by other writers that will work, with us. And a place to have other kinds of bizarre avant-garde performances or music or whatever. So essentially an alternative art space. And then also Eric, I think envision it as like an artistic hangout. Just like the place where the people on the artistic edges just like to congregate and hang out and all that. And all those things came true except for maybe that last one.
Yeah. So how long were you in the Grass Skirt? That was quite a while. It's not...
In that building, yeah. 10 years.
10 years.
Mm-hmm.
Any particular fun memories during those 10 years?
Yeah, way too many.
What's the best? Besides the one that you recorded for Dirty Story Night, which people can go listen to on the podcast.
Yeah, I won't have to tell you about that one. Yeah.
We already have that one down and released.
That's right. That's tough. So for a lot of years when I mentioned that place was also a alternative performing arts venue, that became my job. That's where I kind of grew to some importance within the company. I was the person in charge of, well, for instance, I would have been back then the person who would have worked with It's All Been Done Radio, or probably to bring them to put on the shows. So I have a lot of great memories of, various shows that I brought to the theater. Lithuania's biggest rock star ever. A group that's pretty popular now, the Gogol Bordello, played their first Columbus show at MadLab. But if I had to go, I guess an all-time favorite memory, I'm still going to cheat and bullshit and give you two. But two productions that I got to direct, or, I was the project manager of, or whatever. One of our versions of Comrade's Christmas Carol, we've done it 4 times. So I directed 2 of those, and the one that just really sticks out for me was the one that happened in 2001. And it's essentially a comedy about a director who believes that A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens has actually been misread all these years, and it's actually a communist tragedy in which the heroic, fiscally responsible, noble hero Comrade Scrooge is beaten down by the evil capitalist ghosts. And it might take too long to go. Maybe someday, if you really want to know, we do a separate podcast where I'll talk about why I like that one production above all others. But the one
because you're a commie?
Well, no, I'm sorry. Why I liked that one version of Comrade's Christmas Carol better than the other three versions, because they're all just as communist. But another one, and Nikki was involved in this, so we can start hearing different voices, was a production called Too Much Theater. Yes. That, I mean, still by mentioning it in a manner that could be heard by the public, still risking getting sued, I guess. But it was something I came up with as an idea, and then had a million people work with me to actualize it. But it was a takeoff, like the neo-futurists of Chicago do their Too Much Light Makes a Baby Go Blind. Well, they did for many, many years until their original founder, I guess, threatened to sue them. I'm not exactly certain how that went. But the point is, 2-minute plays done in random order as determined by the audience shouting out a number. And so what we tried to do is condense down famous plays, although because we couldn't come up with enough, we did movies as well, into short versions, 2-minute versions. Like we had our Macbeth, and I don't hold any superstitions about saying that.
Well, we're not in a theater right now.
We had our.
Now my house will burn down. Thank you.
Yes, pretty sure. Well, we had Agnes of God, which Nikki wrote. We had, but then we had like Lord of the Rings. We had The Good, the Bad, the Ugly, all kinds of things, and really great experience for me because it was something that started from an idea I had. I pitched it to the entire company. A large majority of the company said, yeah, man, we're on board. Those who weren't, I'm not going to say people weren't nasty to me, but there were, various people who's like, I just don't think it's a good idea. I'm not going to be involved. I had so much trouble. I felt like, coming up with good scripts, putting it all together. I kept having to bring in other people going, hey, we're doing The Sound of Music here for 2 minutes, and I can't direct this thing at all. Could you help me, Michael Bailey or whomever? And I just thought I had this colossal mess of shit on my hands. And then we got into kind of Tech Week, and we did a show, like a full run. And that's maybe one of my best memories, is sitting there while we did that full run when I realized this is awesome. This really is damn good. And certainly I could look at it and see in a lot of ways, yeah, that thing that I thought was right, and then I've doubted myself about. No, it turns out I was right about that concept. But then it was also really good because a lot of the ways the cast took off into things that didn't come from my ideas, didn't come from me, didn't come from the plan, just came from what they chose to do. And I realized that unknowingly I had set up an opportunity for a lot of people to be very creative, and they could make it work. So
yeah.
So that's why that show was really successful for us in our terms, in terms of audience, in terms of critical response, in terms of response from the theater community, in terms of a lot of new people came to the company that stayed as members for quite a while. A lot of people got to work on writing and other skills and so on. Okay.
Well, that sounds amazing. Nikki, how did you get involved with MadLab?
Well, actually, I got involved through Greg. I met Greg when I was doing a show at Gallery Players called Galileo, and Greg was in the show, and we both had like small bit parts throughout the show. But the entire process of that show, Greg was always talking about MadLab. And towards the end of the production of Galileo, it was myself and Ray Withers at the time. I don't know what her last name is right now. Anyway, we were in the show, and roulette auditions were coming up for Roulette 2002, and he said, hey, I'm going to direct the show. You guys should come audition for it. And I didn't realize I was auditioning for 10 shows at the same time. But I went to MadLab, and I auditioned, and I got cast in Greg's show and one other one called Curio, where I got to play the late, great Chris Lane's wife, which was an absolute riot. It was so much fun. So, yeah, Theater Roulette 2002 was my first show, so good God, it's 16 years now. But like a lot of new people that come in, I came to MadLab and I'm like, oh yeah, I'm never leaving. This place is great. So I've been there ever since.
And that was at the old building.
Yes.
The old...
Yeah, 105 North Grant.
Since you mentioned Theater Roulette, let's talk about Theater Roulette.
Yes.
How old is Theater Roulette and what is it?
So Theater Roulette is a shorts festival. We do anywhere from like 9 to 15. I think one year we did like 15 short plays in like over 3 days, and then those 3 days over 3 weekends. And we rotate which days we do them each weekend. That's why it's called Roulette. But it is the longest running shorts festival in Ohio. I don't know about the whole Midwest, but at least in Ohio. And this is our 19th year. So I don't know what we're going to do next year for a 20th year, but I think we're going to have to do something pretty freaking exciting.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So yeah, that still goes on every year. You take submissions from anybody that wants to send them in. Mm-hmm. And then you cap, what do you do, 1,500 or more for that? 1,500 might be the full length?
No. Oh,
I don't remember.
No, I think 500 is the full length.
500 is the full length cap. I think 1,500 because, one-act plays are quicker to read.
Sure.
So the first Theater Roulette, we had 6.
Submissions?
Well, we didn't really take submissions, but yeah. And then the second Theater Roulette, we opened the submissions, and I think we got 40. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. And now we're up to we've had to stop people.
Yeah, I think 1,500, you just say submissions are closed.
We're done, yeah.
And you've got quite a large team of people in the theater looking over those shorts to try to narrow it down to the 15 or 20 that you're going to do. And
it's grueling work. It's fun, but it can be really obnoxious to sit and read, up to 200 short scripts, because you will get some absolute piles of crap sent to you that look like they were written by someone in the 3rd grade with no spell check, and that will happen. But then you find some really, really awesome scripts in those. So
for you two personally, how do you decide which ones of those scripts might be eligible for inclusion versus the ones that go in the junk pile?
For me, I try to look for a mishmash of, comedy and drama, because if we have of course comedies are fun to read and everybody loves comedies, but if you don't have a good drama in there from time to time, it just kind of, it doesn't seem as interesting to me. Although dramas are really hard to do in a short period of time. A good dramatic 10-minute show is really difficult to do because there's so much establishment you have to do with characters and plot. But whereas, with comedies, you do a couple laughs and you're good. You can do one of those in 5 minutes. I like to try to find things either we've never done before, something unique that we've never seen done on a stage, something that might be just at the edge of physically possible on a stage, which is always fun, something that, is a little bit pushing the envelope if we can, just not terribly written.
Yeah, me, I wish I could answer that question. I really can't. I really can't say what it is that I look for or anything like that. And it's one of the reasons why I don't think I'm one of the best. I mean, I look for, does it make me laugh or feel something, I guess. Mm-hmm. I try to be really, really, really open, and I think I do a good job of being really open to things that kind of, this seems like it's got something behind it that I just don't like. As we're whittling those down, I'm not in charge of what goes on stage. I'm just, if I'm reading a batch of 20 plays, I'm just in charge of what are other people going to get a chance to read. So, meaning that, and there've been some plays in Theater Roulette we've done over the years that I'm like, man, I hate that play, but I was the first one to read it, and I said, someone else might see something in this. Mm-hmm. And sometimes I ended up hating it in the end. Sometimes I ended up liking it a lot.
I feel like Greg and I have a tiny bit of an advantage as well in reading scripts, which I haven't read any in the last couple of years. I feel a little bad about that. But we have seen and read so many scripts over the years that a lot of times we can see something in one that somebody else might not, who hasn't read a lot of scripts. Or we can say, you know what, we've tried something like this and it didn't work, so let's not. Or we've tried something like this and it didn't work, but maybe if we try it a different way. So I definitely feel like we have a little bit of an advantage in that respect, just because we've been doing this for so long.
And it would be complete dishonesty if I didn't mention that, sure, if I'm reading something and I read a character that's like, man, that sounds like the kind of thing I'm good at playing. even if I knew I wasn't interested, like even if I knew I wasn't going to be available to be in roulette, that's still going to influence me, and it's unfortunate. But anybody who doesn't admit things like that, I think, is probably fine.
We're all theater folk. We're all a little narcissistic. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So yeah, if you are a wannabe writer, head to madlab.net and look at what the submission guidelines are for 2019, because by then you'll probably be accepting submissions.
Yes, I forget when we open those up, but it won't be too long.
Well, so this podcast probably won't go up to like July. And then casting, you cast quite a wide net for actors in this. I certainly have noticed a lot of non-MadLab people in this, and this year we had quite a turnout.
Yeah.
You want to talk about that a little bit?
I forget how many we had show up.
I was told 100.
100, that's right.
And I think we have 50 roles. I don't know how many actual actors we're using.
Not we tried not to double cast as much this year.
Yeah.
So I think we've got over 40 actors.
It sounds
in
likely.
Roulette this year.
Whereas a lot of times it's a smaller cast and they're playing multiple roles in different sketches.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, although less so, of time. There's a lot of advantages, of course, to not double casting. And again, same thing. Be honest. If you have more actors, that's more people promoting for you. You'll drive more audience.
It's more butts in the seat.
It's also more of an opportunity to find that actor who, like, there's some plays that need a brilliant performance in this role, and there's some that a brilliant performance won't mean that much more than a good performance. In which case, maybe we don't need to cast. I'll just use an example because he's an awesome actor. Jim Azelvander. We don't need him in 6 roles, even though, yes, he happens to be the best person for 6 of these roles. Well, he can do 2, but the point is there's a lot of actors, I think, over the years we've found because we were open to some more casting, and because you never know which one of those people might be like Nikki. Like in 2002, we could have chosen not cast her and cast someone else that we thought would do a better job. And then we wouldn't have developed somebody who eventually decided, I want to be here forever and be the managing director. Like, you never know, what's going to be in there.
So is that your way of saying you almost didn't cast Nikki?
I don't remember.
No, I'm just kidding.
I don't remember, but I doubt it.
Terrible back then.
Probably true, but I was the one that invited her to audition, so I did cast her. I probably had in mind thinking she'd be good for this role, and nobody else knows her, so they might, like, MadLab has a reputation over the years which has little bits of truth and a whole lot of bullshit in it, in my opinion, of, they only cast their friends. I'm like, well, I'm just going to tell you, I was the artistic director of this company for many years, and I couldn't get cast in Roulette for 5 years in a row. I'm the ensemble chair right now, and of those 50 roles in Roulette this year, I couldn't get in one. I auditioned, I didn't get in one. Now, maybe it is that they're just like, let's just not cast Greg so we can work on that reputation. But but I mean, that is something that, I'm smiling as I say that, but it is something that I have bristled over the years a little bit. But at the same time, I have seen us a lot of times. I use Jim as that example, but it's like, I can't possibly cast a show if I don't have, Jim or Josh or whatever. Well, back in those days, we wouldn't have known how good various other people,
Yeah.
So it's a weird balance there that I think, everything got, in my opinion, a whole lot better about 5 or 6 years ago when our artistic director, Andy Batt, kind of changed the way Roulette was being handled and cast, and he cast everything by night. Rather than 12 directors, if one actor is that good, 12 directors are probably all going to say, I want that one actor. And then Andy, for a while, set it up that everybody is just on their night. And then maybe we'll double cast within that night. Because the other thing that is also a danger is if your whole goal is, I got 50 roles, let's get 50 people in there. Well, it is true that maybe your bottom 20 aren't as good actors, and maybe if you double cast a little bit, you raise your quality quite a bit. So it's an interesting balance to try to...
Yep.
Yeah.
And you end Roulette every year with something called MadLab Christmas.
Yes.
Has that been going on from long ago, or was that a more recent development?
So from the very first year we did that, I don't remember when.
I don't think we started calling it MadLab Christmas until maybe 2005, 2006, somewhere in that realm.
Yeah. I don't remember who and when that got coined. I wasn't a part of that, so for a while I was like, that's a dumb name, but now it's it's a tradition, and so I accept it and I enjoy it now.
We just call it that because it's the greatest day of the year at MadLab.
But the basic gist is, as Nikki pointed out, Roulette will be 3 distinct nights of programming. So there'll be one set of shows on Thursday, one set on Friday, one set on Saturday. The final day, the final Saturday of it, we do one set of shows at 2, one set at 4, one set at 8. So theoretically, and not just theoretically, because a lot of people do this, you could choose to not come to Theater Roulette until the last day, but then you could see all sets
All
of shows
day,
and
yeah.
hang out all day. And it does become a really nice shared, bonded experience, amongst the audience members.
It's I always I like to recommend doing that, but I also don't want the other nights to be empty. So
Yeah.
come see it on other nights as well.
Right.
But it is.
And roulette sometimes sells out, so get your tickets early.
And the 8:00 show and the last night sells out always like a week in advance.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway,
But yeah, like there were for a while, for several years, we had this couple that would fly in on their private plane from Canada every year to see
God, I
us.
forgot about them.
Yeah, I think Steve the trucker used to always come to that. There are various people who it became their tradition to come see us that day. And, I always found it fun, especially if I didn't have to perform in the 8:00 show. The dinner break was always a very fun time for me, especially back in the drinking era of my life. But yeah, and for many years, actually, that day was all of that. And then after the final show, our improv troupe FFN would do a performance, and then we'd have a party. Now we just go straight to the party usually.
Yeah.
Since you brought up FFN, let's talk about that. When did that come about?
I had to ask Pete because I think FFN has been around longer than MadLab. So
Yeah.
I think it started in 93-ish, 1993-ish.
That sounds right.
Somewhere in there.
So
we're actually planning a 25th anniversary for FFN.
Oh, cool.
It's either in November or December. I think it's the first week in November. Anyway, so we're going to have a big to-do for the 25th anniversary of FFN.
Yeah, and that's another group that's morphed a lot over the years. By the time FFN connected with MadLab, FFN was one of the first groups to rent the space from us in 1999. They back then, an FFN show was usually a bunch of sketch comedy stuff and then some improv games is what it was back then. I have great memories of sitting at this show in 1999, and I'm watching it with a couple other people who, like Eric Myers and I think Tom Sadler. Yeah, definitely Tom Sadler, Tommy was kind of like one of our original tech guys for MadLab. We're watching a sketch called The Giant Camel Toe, and it's people out in the woods and there's a giant camel toe screeching and making all this noise. And then they had audience games where see how far down the throat you can get the banana and all that. and Tom Sadler turned to me at one point. He's like, I'm not really sure if this is funny or not. And that was, but here's the thing. Another one of my great memories of, we've mentioned Chris Lane a couple times, Chris Lane founded FFN, and for many years he was in charge of it, and definitely was back then. Well, so they did that show, and the show that Tom said that to me about, and I totally agreed. It's like, I don't know what I'm watching, right? I could totally see people enjoying it. I could totally see people hating it. Well, anyway, it got reviewed, and it got reviewed so horribly by Richard Aids of the other paper, and he called it execrable, like shit. Basically, the next show, Chris Lane at the top of the show, he comes out on stage with the copy of the review, going, "Why are you all here? We suck."
Yeah, that's something Chris would do. Absolutely.
Oh, so you said they were a rental. How did they become part of MadLab?
So they were doing a show, they were doing their show late nights after our show. Some of the main players involved then, Chris Lane, Andy Batt, and Michael Moore. Now, Andy wasn't in all the first shows. He may or may not have been in that show. I can't recall. I don't think he was in that first show. But the point was, they really seemed to especially Chris, like what we were doing. Next thing, get to know, talking with Eric. So that first Theater Roulette more or less came about because Chris Lane had a play he wanted to produce, and then Eric knew that I had one that maybe could be produced, and Jennifer Hawkins at the time, Barlip now, had a play that she was working on, and all these things. And so that kind of helped Eric and Tommy, I think, come together and come up with Theater Roulette. And so what just kept happening is they kept being around, especially Chris Lane. By being around so much, there's all this influx of actors that are now willing to work on Eric's shows. I think Jennifer had a lot to do with talking to Chris and Eric about, there's all this desire for people to do work and all this desire by people to work. It's like, just marry these things together, and that's it, the best I can recall. That's kind of how it all came to be. I mean, I think Jennifer had a big part of that with some conversations she had. Chris, just like many people after him, but he was kind of like one of the first ones. It was the big moment when he said something about we instead of you guys, and then I think he apologized for it. I don't mean it. It was like, no, it's we. You're part of us now. This is your company too. And it just kind of drifted that way within about a year probably of after 1999.
Nice. And FFN, which stands for Full Frontal Nudity, but does perform closed.
Yes.
They do 2 regular shows a year, correct?
Yes.
At MadLab, besides going out into the community and doing other improv events. One of those is the June show, which is different every year.
Correct.
And then the other one, which is a huge MadLab staple, is Date Night.
Yes.
How did that get its start?
That started in 2009 when it was originally called Love in the Time of Comedy. And we were doing it in February, so we decided to do kind of like a relationship, love-themed improv show, which slowly, I don't know if we interviewed couples that first year. I don't know that we did. I think the next year we had the idea of let's bring a couple on stage and interview them and do their relationship. And it just morphed into Date Night from there. Which, has become one of our biggest shows of the year.
Often sells out. And like you said, you bring a couple up on stage. It's a couple of couples. They tell their story, and then the improv troupe acts it out.
Right. We reenact their relationship as best or worst as we possibly can.
I was going to say, I don't think many of them are super accurate.
Yeah.
No. And I think that's what makes it so much fun, because we take liberty with it, and we throw in, we get as much information from the couple as we can, like where they met, how they met, what their first date was like, if they're married, if they have kids, friends, and we just pepper in what we can. And it's gotten as absurd as we had a couple, and the husband, for some reason, Snagglepuss was his imaginary therapist. And Snagglepuss showed up randomly throughout the show. We've taken them to outer space, taken them back in time, in the future.
Took them to Montana.
Yeah, we take as much liberty as we can, but we've never had anybody come up after and say, what the hell was that? That was terrible. That's not us. Even more creepy is we'll go way bizarre, and we'll have the couple come up to us after the show and say, that was spot on. How did you know? How did you know that this and this happened?
Yeah.
We're like, we just guessed.
Yeah.
Apparently you're that crazy, but no, I'm kidding.
Something that I really like about Date Night, so I'm not an improver, so I don't have any involvement with it. Date Night is the one show we have all the time at MadLab where someone inside the company like me can go in there at a sold-out night and have such a low percentage of the crowd that I recognize. It's, although I'm starting to realize when I listen to people talking before and after the show, there are people I'm hearing talking, was like, yeah, this is my 5th year coming to this, So, and a lot of those people, I get the sense from them that it's not like, oh yeah, I go to MadLab for things. It's like, oh, I go to Date Night. And of course I'd love it if they come back to everything, but there are times, some of our shows that do really well, that's one thing, but some of our shows that don't draw as big of a crowd, I'll go to the show and it's like, oh, well, there's Robin over there, there's Michael Grossberg, oh, look, these people get, and I'll recognize a lot of the crowd, which, is something that I find happens at a lot of Columbus theater, but not all of it. When I go to other companies' plays, I recognize a lot of theater people in the crowds as well. Date Night is that one. I mean, like I said, some of our other shows can be exceptions to that, but Date Night is always an exception to that. And I appreciate that, at least, that, okay, we're not just, oh, good, theater people on stage doing shows for other theater people. Sometimes when you perform in a smaller scale, that is certainly what you feel like.
Yeah, we get a lot of outside people for Date Night, which is really cool. And like Greg said, it would be awesome if they came to other stuff, but as long as they're coming to this, I'm happy.
And they might be, every now and then.
I feel like we've had a couple people that have come to other shows because they saw Date Night, so. Another
program MadLab does, which is almost like a theater junior, is Young Writers. What is that program? How did that come about?
That was the brainchild of Andy Batt's wife, Michelle Batt. She, in our effort to continue our mission for original works and unpublished works, we wanted to do more outreach to work with, quote, young writers, where this came from. But so she did some outreach with some of the high schools in the area, and specifically their theater programs, to see if there were any kids that were interested in learning playwriting. So she had the idea of bringing them in to workshop, teach them the ins and outs of playwriting, let them practice, and then workshopping them and eventually performing them for an audience, which is so cool to watch. Because you see, like, when I was in high school, I can't imagine writing a script and having it done at a arguably professional, not professional theater in downtown Columbus. But for these kids to get to see them so excited to A, write something, B, have an established playwright help mentor them to refine their skills as a playwright, and then go on to see their work performed in front of like an actual huge, and they sell out just as much as date night or roulette does. We always have fantastic audiences for young writers, and we've had some brilliant playwrights over the years that have gone on to do much more. We have Carl, who's still working with us at MadLab, who was in our very, very first Young Writers back in 2006.
Young Writers? No, it wouldn't be like 2011 or 12
you're
or
right.
something.
I'm sorry. I don't know what I'm thinking.
I'm not sure.
Anyway, so yeah.
Can we call a Lifeline?
Carl Bergeson.
Carl Bergeson, yes. And we've had several that have come back and worked with us in other capacities as well. Just acting, directing, things like that.
Stage management. Yeah,
Stage
exactly.
management.
Yeah, and it's another one where, on one hand, we do know we have a built-in audience, right? Because if you cast an adult in a play, or have an adult playwright, and they're going to tell all their friends, and all their friends are like, cool, man, yeah, maybe I'll check it out. You do that with a high school kid, and their friends are like, really? You're downtown on a real stage?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that...
Plus, you're going to have parents and grandparents,
Oh,
aunts,
yeah.
uncles.
Yeah.
But the thing, like what Nikki said, that I think is really a big deal too, is that some really great work has come out of it. I like to, and in a way I liken this to our, well, it's not ours, it's just a thing we do that everybody across the country does, the 24-hour theater, where with these kids, it's not that, play wasn't that good, but it's a high school kid, so it's really more, hopefully, it is like, look how great these high school kids can be. Where I think their youth, in some cases, can be used as it's an advantage. It's they're not stuck with plays have to be this way and this is what they have to be about. I mean, yeah, it's true when we read the young writers plays. Sure, there's a lot of younger characters written because of course people are writing about themselves.
Yeah,
but it is really exciting when a play turns out to be really great by one of these kids.
Yeah, I've been impressed multiple times. Not that I went into it thinking, these shows might just be okay because they're written by high school kids. Every year I'm thoroughly impressed by how articulate some of these kids really are and some of the subject matters they come up with.
And they get selected early in the year, right? Even though the show's not till July.
Correct.
So they work with MadLab people for many months on this.
Yes, absolutely.
And then the casting's done on a public forum like the rest of MadLab, so you get a lot of the same adult actors that do the other shows do that.
But what's cool is a lot of times they can bring their friends in from the high schools. Because like Greg said, they're writing shows a lot of times about themselves, and the characters are supposed to be teenagers, and most of us at MadLab are in our 30s and 40s. Some of us in our 50s, we can't be playing high school kids anymore.
Woos can.
That's arguable. I said it.
He'll listen, too. Probably.
I love you, Steven.
And then MadLab usually does 3 full-length shows a year, and you select those you take submissions as well from all over the place.
They're open submissions. They're from literally all over the world.
But MadLab is very focused on original works, right?
Correct.
And finding. So when you're looking at these full lengths, you're not looking at Our Town or anything like that. You're looking at something new and
strictly
interesting.
Unpublished. It doesn't have to be non-produced. We've definitely done shows that have been produced in other places, but we're looking for unpublished and newer works.
And generally, and not produced before in Columbus.
Correct.
Is at least the rules at the moment, which can always change.
That's true.
And then there's also the ensemble show that's written and performed by the ensemble. How long has that been going on?
As in its current format, 2 years. When we formed an ensemble in 2002, because we just had all these people who were all around all the time, and so some people decided, let's make this an ensemble. And then I remember at the first meeting, somebody, I won't name Jennifer's name, because it might not have been Jennifer, saying, and don't worry, we'll come up with a better name than the ensemble. Definitely didn't do that.
We're still working on that.
Yeah. It's okay. One of the perks of being a member that we created at that time was, you can help decide what the ensemble show will be, which would be something that's either created by the ensemble or it was very vague. And, what we found is, like the first couple of ensemble shows, I mean, you could see them as ensemble shows, like that Too Much Theater that I described. That was the first ensemble show. Well, not really much else was presented, and then I came in with this idea, and a lot of people liked it. We did it. The next year, same thing. Chris Lane came up with this bizarre concept of an 8-part play based on the 7 Deadly Sins and old Cliffhanger series. So when there was an idea of something that could be very ensemble based, all right, cool, that's our ensemble play, but it was always an idea that came from one person. It eventually became something where we kind of realized, as a perk, the ensemble didn't care that much about this. But a few years ago, 2 years ago, I guess, Jim Azelvander revived that, and he revived that in a way, pretty much all he was doing was saying, we're going to create a format where you as the ensemble can create the show. I feel like what's happened the first 2 years is kind of what we were hoping for, 15 years ago. And because now I do feel like ensemble members, at least many of them, look at it and say, well, I'm looking forward to what I can do for the next ensemble show.
Oh, yeah.
And we kind of got away from doing those for a little while.
Yeah, because nobody cared.
It was hard. It's a really big task to take on.
Yeah.
And I think for a while people just weren't into the idea of trying to write and produce and act and direct and do all the work for one whole show like that until recently. We've got a lot of great new faces and really excited folks in our group now that want to do this, which makes me happy that we're doing these again. Absolutely.
We've mentioned the ensemble several times, but I think that's something that MadLab has uniquely from most theater companies. Mm-hmm. What is the ensemble?
The ensemble is basically a core group of MadLab. I'm not exactly sure the best way to describe it, but it's not a secret society by any stretch. I feel like in the past people have thought it was like MadLab's secret society. It's not. Anybody can be eligible to be on the ensemble once you meet the basic requirements, which is you have to be involved in 3 shows in some capacity.
Right, and 3 shows, important to mention, doesn't mean you got to get cast 3 times. It might just mean, like James Daly, you said, oh, I want to be a member. Can I come to a few work days? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, as long as you're doing enough work and expressing that you want to be part of the group. And, if you're making the effort to be part of our group, eventually.
Yeah, you let me in, and I've never acted in a MadLab show.
We've had multiple people in our ensemble that don't act. Michelle DeCiclio doesn't really act either. She's been on stage a couple times, but she would say she's not an actor. But as long as you're putting in the effort and putting in the amount of hours that are required for the ensemble,
you can be eligible.
You can absolutely be eligible. You have to be voted on. So,
one of the things that I think had been a misconception over the years, and probably will continue to be to some degree, is that once I get to be an ensemble member, I'll get cast. And
no.
Like I said, doesn't matter, doesn't help. I think the misconception comes, it's human nature, right? Whenever you want to do something, you want to go act in a show, and you audition for the show. If you don't get cast, there's a lot of different reasons we can have in our minds as to why we didn't get cast. Someone else is better is one possibility. We don't like to think about that one. Someone else, oh no, I'm better than that other person, but they didn't realize that they made a mistake. Yeah, okay, sometimes we'll think that way, but I think it is human nature sometimes to say, oh, I didn't get cast because they only cast people in the company. And, like I said before, for many years, it's a weakness sometimes, right? It's like, I'm going to, cast people. I know what Nikki can do, and I might have Meryl Streep audition, but if I didn't recognize her, I might not realize how awesome. Okay, maybe I wouldn't recognize her.
I would think you would recognize Meryl Streep.
I'm not a very good director, so maybe I'm not. But the point is, we have had instances over the years where people would join the ensemble and then become very frustrated because they thought that meant they'd start getting cast in everything. And it's like, it's not like a video game where once you join, you unlock the secret and you become a better actor. But yeah, the difference is you do know about more opportunities, certainly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I've always, and I guess now it's my job to, when people want to join, to explain, what you get out of this. And the real simple thing I boil it down to is like, look, this, you really kind of get nothing. Like there are little perks here and there, but they don't mean much.
Right.
No, you just have to do all the work. Right?
Yeah.
Right.
You have to work the ticket counter, you have to work the lighting booth, you have to build sets, tear down sets.
Once you're on, there are a lot of work requirements.
Right.
Yep.
So the only
Keep the
reason,
theater going.
reason to join, there's only one legitimate reason to join, and that's if you want to feel like this is mine too. And you know what? There's a lot of people who have hit the requirements and probably would have been voted yes and have said, thanks, I'd like to continue working with you every now and then, but I don't want to join. There's nothing wrong with that. Like they haven't lost opportunities or anything like that. But then there are a lot of people that, like, yeah, if you want to feel like your company, and yes, ensemble members, especially with this ensemble show now, they do
now
have...
that one they get the casting advantage because you can only get in the ensemble show as an ensemble member.
Correct.
Yeah.
Unless, of course, we find, like our first one, all right, cool, but we don't have enough men available for this.
And then you just raid rentals.
Yeah, we just rated, yeah. Could that be a segue?
It could be. Since it was my guys you stole. No, steal is definitely the wrong word. I feel it's a very
Enhanced.
mutually beneficial partnership. But what made you decide to let us come play in your space?
James here had emailed me about possibly renting the space on a long-term basis to do It's All Been Done Radio Hour, the podcast live. And I had honestly never heard of you guys at that point, which is fair to say. So I went and scoped out your website and listened to a couple of your podcasts. But what really excited me about it was it seemed like you guys had the same type of mission we did, where you were trying something completely new. I mean, yes, people are doing podcasts. That's like a big thing now. But just to bring back the concept of like the old school radio dramas and serials and things like that. As far as I had seen, nobody was doing those, even though it's all been done. Shut up, Nikki.
You unlocked the secret of our
Shut
title.
up, Nikki. I'll stop. But it just seemed like your vision and ours were kind of in line with each other in that respect, which is why I thought it would be such a good fit to have you perform at our space.
Yeah, I'd say when we reached out to you, we'd only released a couple podcast episodes because we'd been performing for 7 months, but we had only launched the podcast like a month before that. Yeah. So there wasn't much to hear.
There wasn't a lot.
And the audio quality wasn't great in those early episodes. Okay. What were your hesitations? What were you worried about?
I didn't know you guys at all.
Sure.
I didn't know any of you. And there's always a hesitation when I rent to new companies that I've like not heard of and don't know personally or through anybody else really. So there's that. Any like long-term rentals scare me a little bit, just because committing to something, renting for such a long period of time could come back and bite me in the ass. Had you guys destroyed our space once a month or, I don't know, burn the building down, that could have been disastrous. But
I think you only told us you'd guarantee us a few months to start, and we'll see how it goes.
Well, that was my thought. I was like, let's do 6 months or so, because I think it was...
We moved in March, was our first show there,
And I thought, well, maybe till the end of the year, till September, and then as long as it's working out, which obviously it has, since you guys have been there for a couple of years now. Not knowing you and long-term rentals both were a little scary for me, but I'd like to say it's turned out great.
Yeah, and I wasn't a part of any of that, but for a long time, I did some similar jobs to Nikki in terms of, negotiating with all these things. And a hesitation I would have had, pretty similar to what she said, but is that anytime someone says I want to do this on a long-term basis and all that, there's just such a large percentage of the time they're not going to deliver on what they planned. Not even to the point of worrying about destroying the space or anything like that. Just we're going to do this, we're going to do that, and so on and so forth. We've heard that. Everybody's heard that a lot over the years. Yep. On the other hand, I feel like if I was reading a proposal and it said something like, we would like to do one show a month, every month, forever, on a Saturday in the mid to late afternoon, my other thought would be, oh God, wouldn't it be awesome if this does work out? Because then there's use of the space at a time that we're not usually doing anything public. So I also would have seen, but again, I've seen a lot of things like that over the years where it's like, oh my God, this would be so awesome if this person can deliver, even if I hate the shows, or if I love whatever, if this person can deliver what they say, it could be amazing. And so guys have delivered, as far as I know, everything you've always claimed.
Absolutely.
What do you like about having Radio Hour there?
I mean, the biggest thing I think arguably anybody would agree is that we've got a lot of great new people involved in the ensemble and at MadLab through your cast and through the people involved with you guys. And it's nice. I hesitate saying that a lot of us are getting older now, but it's hard for some of us to put in the time.
Getting older while you say it.
I am getting older as I say it. But to put in the time and the effort to do a lot of these things, but to have some somewhat younger people who have a lot more enthusiasm than some of us do, to be willing to pull out some new ideas and try new things is great.
Yeah.
So
5 of us are on the ensemble now. Certainly some of our audience has started sticking around for other MadLab shows.
And that's we've had some really great cross promotion. We try to during our full length shows to promote you guys as best we can. Say, hey, next week come a couple hours early and see this podcast performed, and then stick around to see our late night show.
Yeah, I really like it. For those reasons, it can give an audience member a reason to make more of a day of it at our place. Like an audience member can now, and some can look at it as like, all right, here's our plan. We're gonna go to the radio hour. We're gonna go get dinner and drinks, and then we're gonna go to MadLab show, and then the party afterwards. You know, like there can be a reason now. And yet another thing is, so MadLab has always been, it seems like, anytime we've had a building, we've pretty much been located on the corner of two major streets, and yet still heard, I don't know how to find your place. Where are you? And you know, well, so anything that gets a person to have to make the effort to go to any space like that means now they know where that space is. And the podcast audience is a lot of different people than the people that already come to MadLab. And so now that they've made that, now that person could someday just see something in the paper and see it's at MadLab, and literally it is, I am certain it's a fact that people will look at things like that, and if they see two things going on that both sound equally interested, but one of them is, oh, I know where that is, I don't have to worry about like navigation or directions, or I know where I can park there.
Parking's free.
It's such an easy thing, such a little thing, but that could be what makes the difference in Bob in Westerville's decisions for where he's going tonight for fun.
And Nikki, you and I have already talked about 2019 dates, so clearly we get to stay for a little bit longer, unless we do something major to screw up.
Yes, unless you really piss me off. You guys are good for a while.
Which is always a possibility. I have to worry about that. Thankfully, we haven't had too many incidents. What do you hope to see from our show in the future?
I would be interested. I know, like, a lot of your storylines you've started, closing off in the podcast, and you've started introducing some new ones. I would definitely like to see some fun, new, creative storylines come out of your podcast, for sure. I don't know. It might be kind of cool to see. I know on It's All Been Done Presents, you have your podcast, you have other podcasts, you have written work.
I've got a video series by somebody named Nikki Smith.
Oh God, she's insane. Don't ever take her advice. Yeah, but it'd be kind of fun to see some like extra bits, like maybe on a month where we've got a little bit extra time, or you can start a half hour early, maybe have somebody read some of their written work, or have a live production of Nikki Tells You How to Live Your Life.
So involve some more of the network stuff.
Yeah, just see some of the other stuff you have involved. I think that would be kind of neat to see.
That would be.
Just to put that little bug in your ear.
I like
little
it.
Thought.
I like it. Good thought.
Mm-hmm. Or even for like, I know at the after party is when you record Dirty Story Night, which is always a freaking riot to watch. But maybe at those points throw in something extra as well.
Yeah.
Just a thought.
I like it.
Yep.
And you've guest starred as well.
Yes.
So we've stolen a bunch of MadLab on some of ours to guest star.
Yes.
We haven't had Greg on yet. No. But he's done some of our other programs for the network.
Did one.
Well, you did Dirty Story Night.
Yeah, I did Dirty Story.
And now this is your Radio Hour
debut.
debut.
This is happening right now. That's right.
Because this will be on Radio Hour's feed.
Yes.
Okay.
So now you've appeared in Radio Hour, sort of. Yeah, thank you guys very much for hosting us and making a home for It's All Been Done. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you guys. You have been an absolute delight to work with. Absolutely, hands down.
It's All Been Done Radio Hour number 135. Meet the Cast number 23. Meet the MadLab. Star Jerome, Wetzel, Nikki Smith, and Greg McGill. Please check out our website, itsallbeendoneradiohour.com, which has links on the story and bios pages to our brand new Wikia, which has all kinds of information about our segments, our characters, our stories, individual episodes. It's still under construction, but there is a wealth of knowledge there. Please follow us on social media at IABD Presents on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And on Facebook, we also have our own It's All Been Done Radio Hour page that you can like and follow. Have a great week. It's All Been Done Presents.
Who's got the time?